So earlier this week, Crocoblock released a major update to Jet Engine. This now releases 2.2. And with that, they brought some of those much needed features that a lot of people have been requesting, including myself. That's the ability to front-end upload content, so you can have forms to upload content on the front end that are not restricted like they used to be. And the second thing is the ability to actually have a sort of user control panel. In this video, I'm going to try to give you a brief overview of these new features, and in a future video where I've kind of got my head around this a little bit better, I'll give you a lot more in-depth tutorial and show you how you can integrate this into your entire design process. So join me as I kind of take a, should we say, a second walk through this. One thing to bear in mind, this is the first release. This is 2.20. So there are potentially some bugs and some issues, some things that I've come across that the developers are going to take a look at releasing an update in the next day or two. So hopefully when you see this, these are either going to be fixed or they'll be fixed in the next day or two. But if you come across anything, let me know in the comment section below any problems you found, any quirks, anything that just doesn't work as you would expect it to, and I'll try and pass that on to the developers and see if we can get some fixes pushed out quite quickly. With that out of the way, let's just jump over into the dashboard now and let me take you through and show you how these new updates to Jet Engine impact the way that we can start creating more dynamic content with this plugin. Now, I've already created a very simple kind of setup to use with this particular video, and all I've done is created a single taxonomy. We've got a couple of templates to display the archive and the single post listings. We've got a listing setup. So all these things are the kind of things you'd expect to do as normal when you're working with Jet Engine. If you'd like to see the complete video on how I've done all of this, put a link in the description below and drop a card in the corner now so you can take a look at that and you can see exactly how this is all set up. But as long as you have some basic sort of Jet Engine setup in there, you've got some data, some custom fields and so on, you can sort of harness the power of this kind of feature quite easily. So first thing we're going to do is we've got to enable this particular function. So come into the dashboard. Now, by default, Jet Engine has a lot more functionality than you may be aware of, but you have to activate it. So if we come to the Jet Engine section inside your dashboard and we come to the first entry, which is Jet Engine, once you open that up, you can see we've got a lot of different modules we can enable. Now, what we need to do is enable some of these to make sure that we can start working with these new features that are part of Jet Engine 2.2. So first of all, I want to make sure we've got the forms enabled so we can start to harness the functionality there for this front-end posting and editing and things along those lines. Listing grid injections, I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. You can say we want the profile builder as well. Now, once we hit save on there, we now have those modules enabled. So you can see it says one of the activated modules needs to be refreshed and blah, blah, blah. So we've done that. So that's the first part of it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to the skins manager. Now inside here you can see we've got import and export skins, which is perfectly fine. So this is import new post types, taxonomies and listings items from a JSON file. So if you want to transfer data back and forth between sites, you could use this function. So you could import and export from there. But we also have import configuration parts from presets. So if we click and open that up, you can see we have some options now that are kind of tied into this profile builder side of things. So it says user profile with editable content. We could import that. And editable user settings page for the user profile. We could import that as well. So we start off with the user profile and editable content. We'll click on import on there. So this says now this has imported various different things for us. Main with the posts created by the current user, an edit post and a new post section. So the final thing we need to do is update the permalink settings. Now this is something you have to do, but only with this particular import and only the first time you do it. So we click on permalink settings. All we need to do is come down and hit save changes. That's it, that's all you've got to do. So we're going to come back into Jet Engine, back into the Jet Engine first option, come back into the skins manager, back into presets, and then say editable user settings page for the user profile. We're going to hit import on there as well. And that's going to import the various different settings. So you can see that tells us that's done it. It's created a user settings subpage for the account and so on and so forth. Now I'll take a look at those in a little bit so you'll see how that side of things works. So let's click on close. We've now done the basic setup so we can start to use these various different functions, these different modules. Now, you'll take a look underneath the Jet Engine section and you'll see we now have a couple of new entries. We've got Profile Builder and we've got Forms. So let's just jump into the Forms section first of all and take a quick look inside there. Now you can see there are 3 new entries or 3 forms that have been set up for us as part of that import process. We have Edit User, Edit Post and New Post. So we've got the basic setup and this will work with the normal posts that's part of WordPress. It doesn't work with your custom post types, the sort of things you've set up through Jet Engine where you've set up taxonomies and post types and so on. You'd have to create those independently. So if we just take a look at one of these forms, let's just say we'll say new post, for example. We'll click to open that up and this takes us into the form editor. Now this is something you're going to get used to working with because a lot of what you do with this new functionality requires you to set up a lot of different forms. Like I say, for input in taxonomies, custom post types and so on, and the same then for editing those. Now the other thing to bear in mind is when you're working with Jet Engine 2.0, there's a lot of to and froing going on. So this is something that can lead to a lot of confusion when you start working with it. And this is something that I'm still working through myself. Like I say, this update was only released yesterday and I've had a few problems where I've been testing things out and it doesn't necessarily work in the most logical fashion to my brain. Your brain is probably completely different to mine. But I just want to make you aware of that. So if you feel some frustration when you're working through this, don't think that you're alone. It is something that does take a little bit of getting used to. But I think once you get your head around the process that's involved, it'll be pretty simple and straightforward. Like I say, there is a lot of to and froing. Now, before we move on and start working some other sections, let's take a quick look at how these forms are broken down. You've got the field settings. Now, these are basically the fields that make up your form. So you'll have text fields, media fields, you can have WYSIWYG editors and so on. You've also got a button, which is going to be your submit button, which will be the action for that form. And by pressing that button, the next thing happens, these notification settings. These are what happens once you trigger that form, shall we say. You can see with this particular form, we've got insert or update post and redirect to page. So it's going to do exactly that. It's going to insert new information for a new post or update it if you're editing one. Redirect to page then will just say once that action is complete, then redirect it to a specific page or, what you kind of want to do. And there are various different notifications that we can set up. And again, I think this notification settings is not really the best name because these are not necessarily notifications. Inserting or updating data is an action, in my opinion. So maybe the terminology could be a little confusing and could hopefully in the future be a little bit more logical in the way that it's been set up. But it's a minor gripe and it's just something to bear in mind when you're working with this. If you're kind of thinking, well, this is just notifications, it might cause some confusion. Then we've got the message settings. So in other words, when you do something with this form, submit it for example, these are the different messages that can pop up to inform the user what's going on. And you can customize these or you could leave these as they are. And they're all pretty self-explanatory. You've got form successfully submitted and you get a message that says much to the same. A validation error, required field is empty, and so on and so forth. So you can fine tune and configure these to make sure that they say exactly what you want in whatever language you want, in whatever kind of wording you want. And that's basically what makes up a form. And we will come back a little later and create a form that'll show you how you use this and how you build these different aspects up. Okay, so that's the first part of it. That's the form side of things. So now let's hop over into the user profile builder. Again, let's expand the Jet Engine section out and we're going to come down to profile builder. And inside there, we have 2 individual tabs, pages and account page. So this is pretty self-explanatory, like I say. Account page, what page is going to be used for this? If you've used the little wizard that I showed you where it'll import these settings, it'll create an account page so you can use that. However, if you wanted to create your own and not use that sort of wizard, you could do that and then simply select the page that you want from this account page section. And then Jet Engine will know that's going to be the sort of home page for all of the account settings. Next up, we've got the user page. You can see and add a public page for a user list. Single user page and so on. So these are things that if you want to, you can utilize these. I'm not going to cover these in detail. We'll look at these in a future video where I can really focus on how this plugin works in a lot more detail. Hide admin bar just basically means that the admin bar you'd see at the top of the page on the front end of the site is just disabled completely. Next up, we've got the account page, and this is kind of where you will customize that profile area, that profile page. At the moment, you can see we've got main, which is kind of like the welcome, the index, whatever you want to call it for the account page. You've got add new post, edit post, and user settings. So these will basically take you to a page that references the form that's automatically been set up for things like adding a new post, editing a post, or editing your user details. So that little wizard has done all of this for us, but we can, if we want to, do it all from scratch, or we can utilize that little wizard and we can create our own custom sub pages. So you may want to have a page inside the account that links through and shows all of the posts that your particular user that you're logged in as has done. And then you can edit those. Or you could have another one that allows you to create and add a new post for your custom post type, which is something we will take a look at during this video. So you can come in and you can use this profile builder and create as complex or as simple an account page as you want, as you kind of see fit for the project that you're working with. Now, before moving on, now we've seen what the dashboard side of things looks like and how we can set this up. Let's take one more look at what it looks like on the front end. So this is just going to be the account page that's been set up as part of that wizard. Click to open it up and you can see we've got add new post and user settings and main, which is basically, like I say, it's just your account home page for that. So if we went to add new post, you can see that takes us through and we can add a post thumbnail, post title, and post content. So the basic building blocks of any kind of post. If we go to user settings, from there you can see we can do things like upload a profile picture, we can set our email address, our name, and an about me. Now obviously you can customize this if you want to with various different fields, but this should give you a good idea of the basics of what you've created as part of Jet Engine 2.0's user sort of profile area. Okay, so let's come back into the dashboard and we now need to go through and create all the different components that we need to be able to add in a new section to this. Now for this example, we're going to really keep it straightforward. We're going to create a new section that allows us to add a new property. So we're going to do just that. Let's hit save on here to make sure that anything that I've done is saved. And before we move on, you can see it says for authorized users, what to do when a non-authorized user tries to access the account page. So before we sort of move on, you can say redirect to the default WordPress login, redirect to a page, or show a template. So this is how you can just kind of handle anyone that tries to access this page. Normally you probably set it up to go through to a section that says you're not logged in, please log in, but you can set it up to pretty much whatever you want. Okay, so that's the user profile builder section. Right, next thing we need to do is move on and start creating the form, which is the first thing. So to do that, we're just going to come back over to the Jet Engine section and down and choose the forms option. Now, all we need to do is click on add new, and we're going to give this a name. So we're just going to say this is going to be the add property section. So what we're going to do is drop that in for the title inside there. We'll leave all these message settings as they are. And as you can see, we get a couple of default entries for both the field settings and also for the notification. By default, it's going to pull in the post ID, which is going to be, if you're editing a post, this is going to be something that will be pulled in from a link. However, because we're creating a new entry, a new post, there's not going to be a post ID. So we can just remove that. And to remove it, you simply click on the X on the left-hand side, and it says, are you sure? And we'll say, yeah, we're happy with that. We then have three options: add field, add submit button, and add a page break. Now the page break is more to do with just creating sort of broken down simpler forms where you can break them down into different pages. Submit button has already been added in there, but if for any reason you deleted that, you can add it back in. And add field just effectively does exactly what we expect it to, allows us to add a new blank field. So we'll click on that and you see now we've got our blank field. We're going to drag and drop that into position. And we can just come in and edit that if we want to. We're going to click on the little pencil icon, and from there we can start editing all the different aspects of this particular field for our form. So you can see we've got the field type, the field name, the label, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill some of this out. Now, you don't have to worry if you don't know the name of some of the key fields that are part of WordPress, because we can assign those later. Now, this is one of those new things that's been added into this latest iteration of Jet Engine, and something that I've been asking for quite some time, which is the ability to reference things like the title, the content, and the featured image. Previously, in the older versions, you couldn't actually store those values in there. So we can now, which is great. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this name, and we're going to set that to be property name. Like I said, it doesn't really matter what you call this. We can reference it and link it through to those key fields that are part of WordPress just a little later. So the label, we're going to do the same thing in there. So we're going to just copy that from there, drop that in there. If you want to put a description in, you can. Obviously, we want to set this as a required field because we need them to put in the property name. Then you've got placeholder, you've got default, visibility, and so on. So we can click on there and you can see it says for all, only for logged in users, only for not logged in users. So if you're making a form that doesn't require a user to be logged in, it's just for anybody to submit, then you can set the rule up in there to make it available to anybody. So it's up to you how you want to set this up. I'm going to leave it as it is for now, because like I say, this is just a demonstration, but those options are there should you need them. We've also got a custom CSS class, so if you wanted to, you can assign custom classes to any or all of your fields inside your form, and then you can customize those later on using the normal CSS panel inside the customizer, or any other method you'd have for customizing your CSS. So we've done the first field on there. We can just simply come down now, hit apply changes. And this is something, again, I'm not too fussed on with this. If you forget to hit apply changes, especially if you come in and edit a field, so you can make changes. Let's just say you want to change this from text to email, and then we just carry on working, and then we hit publish. The changes are not saved. So bear that in mind. You need to make sure that you hit apply changes to save what you've done into that particular form field. Okay, so the next field we're going to work with is going to be the option for the WYSIWYG editor for our content, the description of our property. So you can say add field again, reorder this, and click on the little edit button. Text is perfectly fine. Field type is text again. What we can do then is we can say, if we want to, we can come into the text here at the top and say we want WYSIWYG this time instead of just plain text. And you see that now changes the options below. So these are all context sensitive for the most part. There's going to be different field information depending upon the field type you choose. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this content. Actually, no, we're going to call that property description. There we go. Do the same for the label then. We'll copy that, drop that inside there. Leave everything else as it is. Hit apply changes. And I'm going to go through now and I'm going to add a couple of extra fields in, and then when we take a look at adding a field that's a little different, like a select field or something, I'll come back and show you how we can set that up. But I'm going to show you the same duplication over and over again. Okay, so I've added in all the rest of those normal text fields. We're now ready to add in some different types of fields. So the first one we're going to deal with is the featured image for this particular property. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll say add field. We're going to drag and drop that into position and click the edit icon. From there, we're going to change the field type to media. So we're going to come down and choose media. Then the field name. Now you can call this whatever you want. So we're just going to call this thumbnail. Label, we'll just call this featured image. There we go. Required, yes. User access. Now this is something you can set up for who can actually upload files. And you can see we have 3 different options. Any registered user, any user who is allowed to upload files, and any user who's allowed to edit posts. We're going to set this for any registered user because I don't want any real restrictions on this other than you have to be a registered user and logged in. But it's entirely up to you how you do it. We're going to say if checked, new attachment will be inserted to the uploaded file. We say yes, we want to do that. And then we've got 3 options for how the data is stored in our database. The attachment ID, the URL, or a combination of both. For this, we're going to say we want the attachment ID. Maximum number of files allowed. Now this is the thumbnail, so there's only one of these. So we're going to say 1 on there, and we can set the size we want. We'll say 5 megabytes. And then we can choose what file types we want to allow. So we're going to say JPEGs, GIFs, and PNGs. Then we've got visibility. We're going to say for all. So this is dealing with the visibility of this form entry. And once we've done that, we say apply changes. So there's our first field like that type. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in the gallery. Now this works in pretty much exactly the same way with one key exception. And I'll show you that now. Add a new field in, position it, edit it. And what we're going to do is, again, we're going to choose media as the type. Change the name of this. I'm going to call this gallery. The label is going to be gallery as well. Now, you don't need to worry too much about linking these through to their counterpart names, the meta field names, which I will jump back and show you in a moment. because we can kind of link these through as a little later step when we insert and update the post. So don't worry too much about having all these details exactly the same as your meta fields, because they're linked separately. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again. Any registered user, attachment option, field value, we say attachment ID, maximum number of files, we're going to set this to 10, and a maximum file size to 10 megabytes. And we're going to come down and choose those same file types. Everything else is going to stay the same. Hit apply changes. So we've added in those couple of extra fields. We've still got a couple more to do, but I want to show you one other thing before we move on. The thumbnail and the gallery don't need to have full width layout in our styling. So what we can do is we can come over to this right hand side and we get this little two-headed arrow. I can now drag that across to get into position where I want, and you can see it tells me across the grid of columns that we're working with in our design exactly how much space that's going to take up. So I'm going to do exactly the same for this, and you should see we can now reposition that. So we've got our thumbnail and our field gallery side by side. So you can easily and visually set up your form to look as good as you want in any kind of structure to get exactly what you want. Okay, we've got two more fields to add in. So we can say add another field in, position this where we want and edit it. Now this is going to be the status of this property, and we've set this up as a kind of a custom select list. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and set that up. So we're going to say select is the option for the type. Field name, we're going to set this to status. Label, we're going to set this to property status. We're going to leave the description as it is. We're going to set everything else as it is on there. Required manual input is fine. However, if you wanted to, you can see we can actually pull this from various different areas. So if we set up a taxonomy, we could reference that taxonomy, or we can use posts, or we can use a meta field. But we're going to keep this as a different option. We say manual input. We're now going to add in our first option. So our first option is that the property is available. So we can set our value and our label. We're not doing any kind of calculation, so we can leave that field empty. Add another option in. We're going to say under offer. And a third and final option, which is just going to be sold. So there's the three different values we've got in our select field. Then we can drop in, if we want to, a placeholder, which is going to be the first entry item in that select list that tells the user what to do. And we're going to say, please select, please choose. We'll hit apply changes, and that's that field set up. We've got one more field we want to put in, and this one is going to be for using the taxonomy. So it'll say what type of property it is. So what we're going to do, drag that into position, edit this. I'm going to change this, and we're going to choose again, select. Now this is where one of those little bugs comes in. Normally I would set this as a checkbox, but if I do that, I can't actually select any values, and it doesn't assign it to the custom post type. This is something I've made the developers aware of, and they are going to take a look at it. If they find there is a bug, then they will fix that and push out an update, they said probably tomorrow. So fingers crossed, this will be rectified by the time you actually get to see this video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say the property type is the field name. I'm going to say label is the same on there. Required is fine. This time we're going to change it from manual input, and we're going to say terms, because we've already created that taxonomy, and we can reference that now to fill out the values inside the select. So select terms, you can see that opens up taxonomy. Click on there, and we're going to say property types. Placeholder will simply drop in, please choose again, and we'll say apply changes. So that set those things up, and we're going to do the same as we did last time. The status, we're going to drag that over to set that halfway. Same for the property types, and we're just going to position that where we want. So we've now created our form. The next thing we need to do is tell it what to do with that form. Now you can see it says send email, and I would recommend that you have something like this set up, because if someone is submitting content to your website that you're going to set up to be, it has to be confirmed, or you just want to be notified that something's been submitted to the website, this send email trigger, this notification is very useful. And again, we can simply edit this by clicking on the little edit icon on the right hand side, and you can see we can come in and choose exactly what's going to be set up and sent through. So you can see we've got things like send mail and so on. So these are the kind of actions that'll actually be triggered. You've got who you're going to mail it to, and you can see we've got admin, and we've got a couple of different options in there. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to go through all that, but for this example I'm going to delete that from there and say okay. And I'm going to create my own new notification, which is just going to be to insert or update this data. So you say add notification. You can see it automatically puts in send email as the default value. I'm going to click on there and we're going to change this to insert update post. And as you can see, we have those different options. So if you wanted to update a user, depending upon what the form is for and what you're letting someone do, then you'll choose exactly what happens with these different triggers. So we'll say insert update. We've then got the options for what exactly are we going to insert or update? Where does it go? We'll click on there and we're going to say this goes into properties, which is the custom post type I set up as part of Jet Engine. So I'm going to click on that. You can see then we've got the option to set the post status. And this is basically saying when someone submits this content to your website, what status does it get as part of WordPress? Click, you can see we've got draft, pending review, private, and published. Now, I would highly recommend, unless this is something you're doing yourself or you don't mind anybody publishing content to your website, you set this up either as draft or pending review. Set up an email then that gets sent through to notify you that some information has been added to the site, and then confirm it to make sure everything is okay before you publish it. So we're going to set this to be pending review. Then underneath that, we've got the field mapping, and this is where we can go through and specify exactly where each of our form entries is linked through to. So, a couple of things we can do with this. Property name, we know, is going to use the title field that's part of WordPress. So I'm going to click on there and you can see we say post title. The description is going to use the post content. Again, one of the native fields that we've got as part of WordPress. Property price, location, thumbnail, and so on. Well, we'll come back to the property price and location in a moment. We're going to set the thumbnail to be the post thumbnail because, again, that's utilizing the default core functionality that's a normal post type inside WordPress. So we don't need to do anything other than just map it through to those built-in functions. However, the next thing we need to do is things like property price. So we're going to select that, and we know that's a meta field. So we're going to click on post meta, and that gives us then an empty box to the right-hand side that says, what exactly does that link through to? This is where you need to know the names of your fields. So I'm going to come into my Jet Engine, and I'm going to open up my post types. So open up a new tab, open that up in there, and there's my properties. If I click to expand, we've got 4 custom fields: property price, location, gallery, and status. Next to that, we've got the field name, property-price, location, and so on. So these are the things that we need to use to reference those relevant fields that are part of our custom post type. So I've already got this information on a screen by the side of me, so I'm going to copy and paste that over. So the property price is going to be property-price. The location, I can click and I can say the same thing again there. That's a post meta. So we're going to set that to be location. Thumbnail is perfectly fine. The gallery, I'm going to click, I'm going to say post meta again. Just going to copy these values over. So like I say, these are just those meta field values. Status, well, status is going to be a meta again. So we're going to say post property status. And the final one, which is going to use the taxonomy, is a post term. So we click on that and you can see we don't have to put anything in there. We can just select from any of the custom post terms that we've got as part of WordPress. Click to open that up. We've got categories, tags, and formats, which are normal things you'd have as part of WordPress. We've also got property types, which is the custom taxonomy that I set up. So that's what we're going to choose. I'm going to click on that. And that's all the fields in our custom form now mapped through to their relevant counterparts for the data that we want to store. Got default fields. You can set up default values inside here if you want to. So something that doesn't require to be part of the form, but you need that data to be inserted into your custom post type. You can do that from there. We're not doing that in this example, but it's there should you need it. So once I've done that, I'm going to click Apply Changes, and that should now have set up everything that I need. If I click on Publish, that should now be my front-end form, all set up, ready to start being used and referenced inside our custom panel. Okay, so now that we've added the form, or we've created the form, how do we start to use it? So let's just jump back over into the account section and refresh this page. Now, I've refreshed the page, and as you can see, our new form just doesn't show. Well, this is where I was talking about at the beginning of this video. There's quite a few different hoops you've got to jump through to make sure you get exactly what you need. So let me just show you one of those hoops. Come back at the dashboard. I'm going to come into the template section that's part of Elementor. Come into the Save to Template section. And from there, we're going to create a new template. So we say Add New. We're going to set this to be a page. And from there, we're going to give this a name. So we're going to call this Add Property and say Create Template. Once we've done that, we can now go through and add the relevant elements into this particular page. Let's get rid of this title at the top. So we're just going to turn that off. We're going to come back in and choose the widgets. So we're going to just type in form, and you can see this is the form element that we want. As you can see, the icons are a little different, and the icons for Jet Engine are all different. Again, it was one of those things I'd like to see the logo in the top right hand corner. If you've seen any of my recent videos, you'll see that I've commented quite a few times where you've got different plugins that add in extra widgets into the dashboard, or into Elementor, I should say. And where they put the icons in, it makes life a lot easier, especially when they have the same name as some native other functions. So just something to bear in mind, and I'd love to see the developers of Jet Engine and all their plugins just drop in their logo in the top right hand corner of their icon so we know exactly what we're working with. Anyway, with that being said, drop this into our page. Let's make a bit of space at the top and bottom so it looks a little neater. And we're just going to put in 50 pixels top and bottom. So you see what it does is it says, please select the form to show. We've created that form, so we can now go through and select it. So where it says select form, click on there, and you can see the three that are set up by default when you use that little wizard are all listed there. However, we want to use add property, which is ours. So we're going to click on that, and you see that now pulls in our form with everything showing exactly as you expect, including the different messages for either successful or for an error being displayed underneath. And you can then say what kind of layout you want. You've got options for column and row. It's up to you how you want to set those out. We've also got the submit type. We've got reload, or we've got Ajax. So you can choose which is your preferred option from those two. And the final option we have is whether we want to cache the form output. Again, up to you if you want to use that. We can obviously come in and style things and set all the various different things up. One thing you will notice though is that you don't necessarily get to see all of the different features that are part of your form. So you don't see if it's a WYSIWYG editor you've chosen and some other different things. But like I say, that's just from the dashboard side of things of WordPress itself. On the front end of the site, it'll all work perfectly fine. Okay, so let's hit publish now on this new page, or this new template, I should say, and that's the template saves. Let's just jump back over the accounts page on the front end of the site and refresh, and you'll see that once we do, still nothing actually appears. And that's because we need to tell the new profile builder that we have a new section that we want to use as part of this profile page, this account section. So what we need to do is come back out of this. We're going to exit out of the template editor. We've got our template all set up. We're going to come back into Jet Engine. We're going to come down to Profile Builder. And from Profile Builder, we're going to come into our Account Page tab. And you can see there's the four that we took a look at earlier. We're going to click on Add New Subpage. I'm going to click on there. I'm going to give this a title. We're going to call this Add Property. The slug, as you can see, it automatically fills that out. And then it says the template. Select the Elementor listing item template to show on a current page. We're going to click on there, and we're just going to say Add. And you can see it now filters through for any of those templates that match the keywords that we're typing in. So we want the add property. And you can see that allows us to do that. And then we say hide from menu. So this page will be hidden from the profile menu, but accessible via the URL. So if for some reason you didn't want to display it on the left-hand side in this particular design, but you still wanted the page to exist, then you could set it up in that way. For me, I want this to make sure that it's part of that navigation structure. We'll hit save. Once we've done that, if we come back over to our accounts page now and refresh, there's our new add property section. So we've added that new entry into our account, into our profile. Click and add property. And there you can see is our layout all set up. Now, obviously, for some reason, this isn't showing as the WYSIWYG editor, but that might be my error. I might not have chosen the right thing. But we can see that everything is now set up the way we'd expect it to. If we come down, you can see that where we put the options in ourselves for the property status, they're all listed. And if we take a look at the property type, which is being pulled from the taxonomy, you can see there's any of the items we have inside there. Okay, so we created our form, we've added it into our account section, we've done all the things we needed to do with this side of things. And if we add some content in now, it'll go through and upload that relevant data through into our actual dashboard of our WordPress website for our properties. So that's the first part of this side of things done. Like I say, there are quite a few different hoops to jump through, but when you create something like this, you'll be doing the same thing time and time again, so you will kind of get accustomed to it. But I would like to see a much more logical way of doing this. Maybe something as straightforward as if you want to add a new page in, you get a complete wizard that says do this, then do this, then do this, And then once you've done those steps, it's added into your account page or your profile page, whatever they kind of want to call it. And everything is set up for you. This toing and froing, especially if you're not used to it, can lead to some serious frustration, as I found it myself yesterday, just trying to get my head around exactly what was going on with this side of things. But there we go. That's how we set those side of things up. Let's move on now and take a look at some of the other things we can do. Okay, so we've seen how we can insert data into the website. How about editing that data? Well, this kind of uses a very similar approach to what we've just done. So all we need to do is create that form that's going to allow us to edit the content. So we're going to come back into Jet Engine and back into the form section. And from there, we're going to create a new form. So we say add new. And for this one, we're going to call this one edit property. And we're going to go through the same process. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video now. I'm going to add in all the relevant fields, which are going to be exactly the same as what we did the last time, with the exception of one thing. And that is the post ID field. We need to have that in there. So when we click to edit a particular post, when it comes out of this form, this data will tell it exactly which post we wish to edit. So when you create your blank form, the two fields you have in there, the post ID and the submit button, you don't delete the post ID. If you do, you just need to put it back in, and you have to have that in there. Just bear that in mind. That's only for the edit option. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video, add all the fields in, and we'll come back and take a look at the next step. Okay, I've gone ahead and created all those fields now, so everything is set up identical to the previous form, with the exception, like I say, of the post ID. What we need to do, though, is say preset form field values. I'm going to click on that, and you can see that now opens up the option to map through the various different fields to the data inside our custom post type, and also as part of the normal WordPress fields like the title and the thumbnail and so on. So what this is going to do is it's going to pre-fill out all the data when we click on edit for that particular post type. Like I say, it could be a post, it could be a custom post type, like this one is, where we're dealing with editing the property details. So all we need to do is exactly the same thing again, is come through and map these to the relevant different sources. So post ID, post ID, post title, post description, post content. We're going to come down and set the thumbnail to be post thumbnail. Property type is a post term, because we're pulling that from that custom taxonomy. So pull them from post property types. And then the rest of them, like I say, are the relevant different field entries that are part of the sort of the custom fields we've set up. So what I need to do is just set those up, and I'm going to pause the video again, apply those values, and then I'll show you exactly what I've done. Okay, so there's all the values put in, so everything is now configured the way we need it with the field mapping. What we also need to set up, though, is this get post ID from. So it's saying, where do we pull the data from to find out which post we're working with? Current post is not what we want. We're not editing based upon that. What we're going to do is going to click to expand that, and we want to use the URL query variable. So I'm going to click on there, and you can see it automatically pulls in the post ID. So it's pre-filled that out because we've got that field in there, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to be exactly what you want. But if for any reason it's not, you want to create a form that uses a different query variable, you'd simply change that inside there and pass that as part of the URL. Okay, so that's how we set those things up. Next, we've got to go through the same process as before, which is the notification settings, which is where once we trigger it by hitting that submit button, what is the action we want to happen. So we'll leave the send email in there if we want to. We're going to click to add another notification. I'm going to click to edit. And then from there, we're going to choose how this particular trigger works. So we don't want to send an email. We want to insert or update a post. So we're going to click on that. It says, what's the post type? So this is pretty much exactly the same as what you had in the previous one, because we're doing the same thing again. We're just editing it this time as opposed to creating a new one. But all the field mappings are exactly the same again, except for the post ID, which, like I say, is unique to the post that we're editing. So post type, we're going to choose properties from there. Post status, it's up to you again what you want to do with this. And again, this is one of those things that it would be good to see an option inside here that just says to leave it as it is. Because let's just say, for example, we create a new post, then we come back in and edit it, and that post has been confirmed. We come back in and edit it, and then we sort of say, well, what do we want to happen now? We don't know what status the previous one was in before we edited. It could be published, it could be still pending review, it could be any of those things. So it would be good to sort of say that whatever the current status is remains the same. So just bear in mind, this could have some strange effects if you set this to be published and you're dealing with something that isn't currently published. It would make those changes and then publish it. That's my understanding anyway. So I'm going to say that we're going to put this back into pending review. So if someone makes a change, it's not automatically confirmed. It goes back into pending. The email will be sent out to the administrator of the site. They'll be notified and then they can actually confirm it when ready. So let's just quickly map these. Post ID, post title, post content, and we want thumbnail. Property type is a post term. I'm going to just set that to property types. Then I'm going to quickly just add in these last couple of fields using those meta field names. So there we go. There's all the fields now mapped to their counterparts. And again, we've got the option, if we want to add in default fields, we can add those directly inside here as well. So we may want to put something in here that triggers this and says, this is an updated post and it's marked as being updated or edited or something along those lines. So that's something you could do if you wanted to. We'll leave it as it is. We'll say apply the changes to that. So now we've got everything in place. Our form is set up, the actions we want to do, the pre-filled out data, the actions then afterwards to send the email and to insert or update that post. With all that in place, we're going to click on publish and we've now created our edit option. Now, how do we get access to this? Well, we're going to do a couple of things first before we even touch that. We're going to come back in and do like we did the last time. We created the form, but there's no template assigned to this or anything else. So we need to do that first. Coming to templates, I'm going to come into the saved templates section. From there, we're going to say add a new template. Select this to be a page, and we're just going to say edit property. Create our template. Once that's created and we go into Elementor, we'll just quickly get rid of this title and we'll come back in, search for forms, drop in our form, add a little space above and below. So you can see it's just repetitive. Like I said at the beginning of this video, you are going to do a lot of the same things over and over again. Select the form. This time we want edit property. We'll leave the layout as is. Reload, we're going to set this to Ajax. So everything is being pulled in the way we want. Hit publish, that's our form setup. With that in place, we're going to come back out of here, exit to our dashboard, come back into Jet Engine and back into our profile builder. From there, we're going to come to the accounts page. So we're just back into the same section where we can set up all the different actions we want to do as part of our account. Now this is where that option I talked about when we said add property actually comes in useful, and I'll show you what I mean now. I say add a new subpage. From there, we're just going to call this edit property. Slug will pre-fill out the template. We're just going to type in edit and choose edit property, but we're going to choose to hide this from the menu. So we'll click on that and hit save. Now the reason we're doing this, if we come back over to our account section, just come back into our accounts homepage, refresh that, you can see the edit property isn't listed there. Now, if you think about it, if we put this into our account dashboard and we clicked on edit property and it takes us over to that edit page, there's no post to edit, custom post or anything else because no data has been transferred. We haven't chosen what we want to edit. So by having that link in there, it makes no sense whatsoever. You'd be better off having a section that lists all of your posts and then making the option to edit by selecting the post and then going to that page. So this is where that particular function does come in quite useful. So with that in place, we're going to come back into our profile builder. We've finished with that now. So we're going to come out of this and we're going to come into our listings section. And I'll show you the reason why in a moment. Now, if you're not familiar with listings, it's basically a way of creating one single item that's part of your loop. So if we come back over into our property section as an example, and we take a look at our properties, you can see we've got 3 individual properties that are part of that loop. So when you create a listing, you are effectively creating just one of these items. So we've got the image, we've got the type, the price, and the location. So the 3 pieces of dynamic data. Then that just repeats and just changes the data based upon the next property in the listing and the next property and so on. So when you use that little wizard that's part of the Jet Engine setup, it'll create a new section inside this listing and it'll call it user post items. And you can see that's linked through to posts, which is not what we want to work with. We want to work with our custom post type. So I've already gone ahead when I created this setup and created these custom listings. I've already got a listing set up in there called property listing. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to edit this with Elementor. Now, this is a really simple example just to demonstrate how these tools work. You wouldn't put this on the front end of your site, but you could use the same kind of technique, create a listing item that's only going to be used in the dashboard, in the account section, and then you could create a listing that filters based upon the user's ID that's logged in, show them all their entries, whether they're draft, publish, pending review, and so on, and put an edit button in there like we're going to do right now. That's going to give you more security over doing it this way. So just bear that in mind. This is more a case of me showing you how this new tool works than actually putting it into a real case scenario, which if you are interested in finding out more about this and you'd like me to do a fully featured tutorial on how to utilize this and build it into part of a fully dynamic website like this real estate site that we did in the introduction video, then let me know in the comment section below and I'll take a look at putting something together in the future that encompasses not only Jet Engine and using that in conjunction with the theme builder as part of WordPress and Elementor Pro, but also how to use these new features of Jet Engine 2.2 and create a user account section where you can manage and control all your content. Let me know in that comment section below if you'd like to see something like that. Okay. So what we need to do now is we're going to do a search for dynamic and we want dynamic link. So we're just going to drag that over, drop that underneath into there, and you can see it says read more by default. And it says, what's the source? It says permalink. Well, we want to change that. We want to set this up to do something else. We want this to go through to that profile page that we created. Now, if you're wondering why we would use that profile page, because we've set the profile page up and we've created that template and we've linked it through, even though we've turned that switch off that says to show it as part of your profile page, the function is still built into it. So we need to reference that. And again, like I say, this is where it just gets a little convoluted. It would be nice to just have a simple wizard that says step 1, 2, 3, boof, you've got it done. Okay. So profile page, choose the profile page that we want to work with. Well, we want to edit a property. So you can see this lists all of those templates that we set up. And this is the thing to bear in mind. What this section shows you is only the templates that you've assigned to your profile page. You could create 100 page templates, but only the ones that are associated with your profile page as part of Jet Engine will be shown in this listing. Okay. So we say edit property. We've then got some options underneath. Now, obviously, read more makes no sense whatsoever. So we're going to say edit property, and you can see that will update the link on our page. We're just going to simply come down and we're going to say we want add query arguments. Once you click on there, you can see this pre-fills out the relevant data. Now, this is the right data for this particular example. If we take a look at what's going on, we've got two different sections. We've got, first of all, post ID equals. Now, if you remember back when we set things up, we said post ID is that hidden field that's going to pass the data over so it knows exactly what to edit, part of the query. Well, that's exactly what this is doing. And then what it's saying underneath is, sorry, to the right-hand side is current ID. So it's going to pull in the current ID for that particular post. And that link will then be the current ID for each of these individual posts that you can click and it'll know because it'll query that data and send it over and you'll be editing the correct page. So if you're used to working with URL query parameters, this is exactly the same kind of thing. This is exactly what's going on. Hope that makes sense. We scroll down, we can then set things up like we can choose the alignment that we want to work with. We can put some spacing around it. So let's just come in and go to advanced and we're going to say we're going to add a little bit of padding. So we'll just say we'll put 5 pixels all the way around this, just give it a bit of space. If we want to, we can drop in an icon just to make this look a little nicer and we'll just say edit. We'll choose that icon and we'll just add a little bit of space around there for the styling. And we'll scroll down, icon gap. So there we go. We've basically set up the link through to the edit page where we can then edit this particular property that we choose. So we hit update now. Providing everything is now in place, we should have that feature set up. So let's come back over to our properties and refresh this page that shows a listing. And there you can see we now have edit property. And if we click on any of these, we'll go to that edit page that we'd have to be logged in on. So we couldn't access this page if we're not logged in. And we click edit property and we go over to that page. You can see that now pulls in all the relevant data. All those fields are pre-filled out. All the image fields are pre-filled out and we can make changes directly inside here. So let's just say this house is now sold. We can click and change that to be sold, hit submit. Form has been submitted successfully and you can see now the property status has been set to sold. So that's how you deal with the editing of your data. Now, even though this is showing you how to do it with this custom post that we set up, the options inside the account section all work in fundamentally the same way, whether you're editing a post and so on and so forth. You'd use the same kinds of techniques. And that's pretty much what I wanted to show you in this video. It's fundamentally gone over a lot of the areas that were covered in the promo video that Crocoblock released yesterday, but hopefully I know a lot of people don't necessarily find those to be the most clear and formatted in the right way, should we say, to impart the information that you want. So hopefully, if there's any gaps in that video, this has helped you understand some of the things you can do with this plugin. But like I say, if you'd like to learn more, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know the kinds of things you'd like to see covered in that video. If you've got a specific type of website you'd like to see it used with, again, let me know and I'll see if I can create content that'll demonstrate how to use the functions that you want to know about in a kind of website that you also want to know about. Well, that's it. That's the new Crocoblock Jet Engine 2.2 update. That's some of the key features, not all of them, but some of the key features that have been added into this major update. Let me know what you think of the plugin and also what I've covered in this video in the comment section below. As always, all the applicable links are in the description, and if you use any of those affiliate links, it costs you no more money, but it does help support the channel and help me create more content like this moving forward for you. As always, my name has been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.